hello, or should I say bonjour. As long-time listeners of the WARC Podcast will know, this charming Gallic music that I'm speaking over can mean only one thing, that we're back in Cannes for the Lions International Festival of Creativity. We'll be here in the WARC studio all week with daily episodes of the WARC Podcast, bringing you the latest from the Creative Impact content program, which we've launched this year in association with Lions. You'll hear from our team as they cruise the Croisette and comb the Côte d'Azur for the effectiveness insights you won't hear anywhere else. Plus, each day we'll be joined by some very special guests from across the industry to share their perspectives from the festival. And for the first time, as well as listening to the WARC Podcast, you can see us as we record these daily episodes. You can head to WARC.com or go to our YouTube channel to watch, or of course, you can follow us on your favourite podcasting platform of choice. Hi, my name's David Tiltman. I'm the SVP Content at WARC. It's the middle of day one of the festival, and it feels as packed as ever up and down the Croisette, from the beach venues and the hotels to the yachts, and right here in the Palais. We've already had some big crowds for our opening Creative Impact sessions. This morning, we heard from AB InBev about how they became Creative Marketer of the Year for the second time. They even managed to sneak in a few comments about Bud Light as well. And there's much more yet to come. This afternoon, we have a session from strategy guru, and I don't often use that word, Roger Martin, alongside the B2B Institute, talking about a new framework called Promise to the Customer. And in a Cannes first, we have a CMO and a CFO on stage together at the festival, revealing what it takes to make marketing prove its worth. Now, in a moment on this podcast, I'll be joined by WARC's John Bizzell, who'll be talking about the newly announced winners of the WARC Awards for Effectiveness. And I'll also be speaking to Ellie Bamford, Chief Strategy Officer for North America at Wunderman Thompson. And she's going to be previewing an upcoming session, our future strategy debate, taking place later in the week. But before that, I'm delighted to welcome to the WARC Podcast studio in Cannes, Gurdeep Puri, who is co-founder of the Effectiveness Partnership. Now, Gurdeep, welcome to the WARC Podcast. Now, you have, we chose you as our first guest because you've got some great new research which talks about the state of creative effectiveness. And obviously, the Creative Impact track talks all about creative effectiveness. We're here to try and unpack it across the course of the week. But we wanted to set the scene with this research and give a bit of a state of play. So, I mean, let's get straight into it. Why don't you tell us a little bit about the research and what it tells us about how marketers view creativity as an investment?
Thank you, David. I mean, let's face it, I think it's a very big part of what marketers do. And they instinctively know that creative investment really matters for the financial success of their businesses. But the research, which is being conducted by the Effectiveness Partnership with WARC and with Lions, which is just off the press, and I think is coming out today at 5 p.m. or so, 6 p.m. or something.
We'll be having it. It will be on WARC and it will be on the Lions websites as well later on.
It shows that I think a staggering 75% of marketers interviewed said that they struggled with making the link between creative activities and commercial return. I mean, that's a huge number.
It's a huge number.
And if you sort of overlay on top of that, 80% said they struggled to understand how their activities were actually working. It sort of gives you a gist of where the research is going that's coming out. I mean, I wish it, gave a lot more enthusiastic numbers, but unfortunately, as we go into it, you realize there's a big job to be done.
That's huge. That is the background of creative impact, though. We know that this is such a big issue. I think what we sort of struggle with is, well, how do we start to resolve this? So, what does the research tell us about what's holding marketers back? Where are the sort of pressure points, maybe in terms of the sort of strategic priorities at the top of an organization?
I think before we quickly get to that, I think just to add some more flavor to this conversation, because I've been looking at the figures a few days ago, if you add on the state of the global economy right now, And look at what's happening in the US. I mean, the yield curve is inverted, which shows there's very, short-term, enthusiasm by investors has gone down. And then, with the Fed Reserve saying that there's a forecast that there will be a slowdown in the US economy in 24, I think is more crucial than ever before for marketers to be able to make that link between downstream activities, midstream behavior change, and commercial results. And in answering your question, what's holding them back strategically, the research showed that 83% of marketers said that one of their biggest headaches was making the link and winning over the C-suite. 83% of them are struggling to make traction with the C-suite. And if you take that in context of what I've just said, economically what's taking place, it's not a great situation to be in. 79% of marketers said they found they had inadequate skill sets and training to help them to do these things. So I think there is a big job to be done. It's systemic across marketing. I mean, sure, there are moments of light that come out, like AB InBev and the Michelob campaign last year, which has been shown to be very successful. The awards that WARC has just done, and there's examples of excellence over there with Lions and with WARC. But across the board, globally, I think marketing has a massive job to make that link commercially between brand health metrics and how they relate to any kind of commercial success for the businesses that they're enrolled in working with.
So if that's what's holding, let's say that's a systemic issue, what can we start to do to address that in terms of the way we look at evaluation, the way we look at joining the dots? I mean, what are some of the things you're picking out?
I think one of the things that's pretty clear, and also from the research, I think 88% said they struggled to relate soft metrics to hard KPIs. And there is the issue. I think we need to stop and really think about what kind of frameworks we're creating, what kind of metrics. But I don't think they're KPIs, they're metrics we have in place. And of course, I think marketing is a slow car on a very fast tech racetrack right now. We're still trying to demonstrate the value of social media and digital, let alone what's coming at us now with immersive media and AI. I mean, the festival is awash with AI this year. I mean, it's a really big job. And I think we need to stop and think about where marketing investment is going in terms of evaluation. What kind of tracking we have in place? Does it really relate to the strategies that are being developed? It goes right down to a downstream level. I think there's a lot of efficiency to be had in the kind of investment put in place to demonstrate value, because a lot of the time the metrics we're looking at, they're not the right metrics that are in place. And the research also shows there is a straight line correlation between the kind of media channels that marketers are using as compared to how they can show its value. We're more comfortable with using media channels which happen to be more performance marketing related, it seems, that we can justify their existence as compared to channels which traditionally have been there for brand building, for example.
Yeah. And there's some good stats in there about media channels specifically. So why don't we touch on those?
Well, you say good stats. I wish I had better news for everyone. I mean, the results show that only 1/3 of marketers said they could actually work out return on marketing investment. 1/3. And 1/3 said they didn't even use data to work out ROI. I mean, that is a terrible situation to be in. And we the things we thought that would help us, many years ago, the tyranny of data, and I call it, the enthusiasm of loss of data available, has only, I think, overwhelmed marketers and all of us. There's too much data out there. So we need to, I think the key thing to do, my advice would be to marketers and everyone out there, think firstly about the strategy that you're developing. Once you have that articulated correctly, then think about the KPIs you need to demonstrate it, instead of looking at existing data and existing KPIs to decide on the strategy that you should be developing. Because a lot of the time, the KPIs you have in place are the wrong KPIs, and they don't really help marketing have traction with the boardroom and the C-suite.
Great. Any other advice that sort of comes from the survey? Any other sort of themes or ideas we should be touching on?
I think the key thing is I would ask everyone to download the survey from WARC, go through it. But I think the overarching thing is, and I think it's beyond marketing. I think it's at an organizational level. I think it's at C-suite level. We have to really think about the role of marketing, and how we can invest in it properly to help brands for the future. Because where it is right now, it's struggling. And I think we, a lot of the time, are using the wrong KPIs and therefore using maybe not the right channels, to really leverage the value of creativity.
Yeah.
So I think there's a big job to be had.
Great. Thank you, Gurdeep. Any other things you're looking forward to over the course of the week? Anything you're keen to see?
I would like to manage to get 10 minutes off and go to the beach. But I think that's about it. There's some great talks, and the WARC platform, you have some great speakers coming on this year. I think you have Martin Weigel speaking, you have the Les Burnett talk taking place. There's a lot of good stuff out.
Great. Good. Thanks for joining us on the WARC Podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
Next up on the WARC Podcast, we have Ellie Bamford, who is CSO at Wunderman Thompson, and until recently was, let me get this right, Global Head of Media and Connections at RGA. So, Ellie, welcome to the WARC Podcast.
Good morning.
What I'd love to know is what you're seeing so far. What's sort of standing out for you? Obviously, it's a bit early in terms of sessions, but maybe in terms of some of the work that you're seeing.
Yeah, absolutely. It's early Monday morning, so we're just getting started, which is very exciting. But big themes I think I'm seeing already just in looking at the shortlist work is NFTs obviously are still there, still present. Still
hanging in.
Amazingly. But I think the monetization of those for real world brand or real world service or good, you're seeing that coming through a lot. Also a recognition, and this is for me as a media person quite interesting, recognition of changed search behaviours and how we're all sort of operating in that space and more inclusivity there. Women's rights and representation, excellent, but with some more grit, some more humour actually, which I'm definitely in favour of. Censorship in media and journalistic integrity, very important. And of course the big one, AI. And AR.
And it's just everywhere,
everywhere. And it's interesting. And one thing I'd say is in the work that's being awarded, it is more about the sort of joy or benefit to communities that brings versus sort of the escapism that I think we talked about in the past. If you look at some of that work around for the Ukraine and everything in that space. So there's some positivity in that.
Great. And as you sort of wander up and down the Quasette, what are you sort of noticing? Are there any sort of things jumping out at you in terms of the themes that the people are really pushing on?
I don't know just yet, apart from AI, which I feel like we're all going to be absolutely sick to death of by the end of the week. But apart from that, I think the thing that sort of always strikes me is any work that's sort of going at the media landscape in a different way, where it feels like non-advertising or it feels like 100% entertainment ideas, or where someone's taking something new, a new media channel and creating it, or taking an old media channel and turning it into something new. That to me is where the most interesting conversations happen, and where hopefully when work is awarded in that space, it does help deliver a signal to the industry about where we're going next and what you can do. I mean, I love that with work like Inside Jobs for Volkswagen, which could have been a really, I don't know if you know that one, but really boring brief about getting mechanics to work at Volkswagen, and they turned it into something so much bigger, and it was so beautiful and simple and elegant. And it was, they printed the job ad on mechanical parts and put them inside cars. I mean, it was just, that sort of work to me is just genius, creating a whole new media channel. And yeah, it's. I
think. I mean, one thing that you're just picking up on, and obviously with your media background, is quite interesting, is how we've had this slightly annoying tendency in the industry to sort of separate media and creativity out, but actually some of the things you're talking about are much more integrated. They bring with the creative and the media has to sort of work together and sit alongside each other.
I've always said that. I mean, and I'll continue to say it, that, media is creative and is a creative discipline. And I think you see that actually in the work that's being awarded more. That to me is ultimately what we're trying to get is attention. and do it in surprising ways. And that's where I think media can really help elevate that with creative and be the idea in itself, actually.
Yeah.
So I get excited when I see work like that gets recognised here.
What about the sort of creator and influencer space? That's been bubbling away for a few years, but I'm noticing quite a lot around that as I'm sort of looking at the beaches.
Well, yes, no Twitter beach this year, which is no surprise, honestly, and frankly, they shouldn't have one. Their new CEO just started 3 weeks ago. She's got a big job to do. They have to monetize the business. It's, ad sales are massively down.
And what's in its place? Is it?
Well, what's in its place is creators, and is a huge presence for creators here at Cannes this year. And I think what's exciting about that with people like Whaler or Influential, who's taken the space where Twitter was, is that that's where the growth opportunities are for brands now. And we're all paying a lot more attention and legitimizing creators in a bigger way. And they deserve it. They deserve a seat at the table. They are a stable line item in every brand's marketing budget now. And I think that people are realizing it's not just about having an influencer create some videos, that they're an integral part of what your brand can be and how you can tap into subcultures and niche communities and all of that space that's so vital. The other thing that's really interesting too is the creator brand product collab that you're starting to see happen a lot more. I feel like that's the sort of must-have addition now that we need to be thinking about and talking about, because it's really helping to deliver growth for brands in new ways directly connected to product. So, and it's not just about an influencer sticking their name on it. It's about that co-creation, which is really interesting.
How should we see? You can see sort of creators as a creative challenge, as a media challenge, as you say, as like a product development challenge. I mean, is it all these things and more? It feels like it's a sort of just a fundamentally different thing that brands are trying to work out how to work with.
Yeah, it is. It's a meaty thing. I'd say there's a lot that you can do within the creator and influencer space. And I think that what brands are discovering is just that breadth and what it can do to help elevate your brand. It does come with risks, and it does come with, I think, having a really close eye on how you think about the partnerships you create, how your brand's represented with those creators and what value that's driving. But there's tremendous potential there. And everyone knows that. I just don't think we've tapped it fully yet.
I think that segues nicely into the session that you're on, and I'm on as well.
Yes.
On Thursday, which is our annual future strategy debate. And this one is entitled, "Is Popular Culture Dead?" And obviously this sort of the rise of creators, the fragmentation of media, that's all part of the puzzle. Why don't you give us a bit of a sneak preview of what you'll be talking about there?
Sure. I mean, this question is fantastic. I was like, when you brought it up, I was like, yes, please. Well, of course, popular culture is not dead. It is alive.
Don't give away the answer. We're only on Monday.
Only on Monday, but still come along, everyone. No, it's not dead in the sense that it is very different, though. But culture is sort of the marketing thing that everyone is putting on every brief that we get given, and we've always tapped into it to deliver influence and drive action with people, but it's a hell of a lot harder now. And I think one big thing I'm going to talk about on Thursday, so please do come along, is streaming. That is really what's changed the whole landscape around culture and popular culture. And I think people, when they think of streaming, they go, Netflix and Hulu. I'm talking about any content, live or recorded, that's delivered to you across the board. So podcasts, webcasts, movies, TV, gaming, videos. This is all streaming content, and it's massively changed the way that we all experience that. So I think there was a few going into and you'll hear this on Thursday, some big stats, but last year Americans streamed more than 19.4 million years of content.
I thought you were going to say hours there. No, years. Years of content.
Years of content. And that's up 27% from the year before. So this is not like a pandemic blip where everyone thinks that it's in that space. And it's just huge, the breadth of content, the original content now that we have access to. And also the world is getting better with high-speed internet, with access to devices. So globally, there's just a huge surge and increase in streaming. And look, honestly, I think it's so interesting. And the one thing I'll touch on Thursday too is that what happens with these platforms like Netflix and Spotify and Amazon is that they bring us together, but they also separate us at the same time. So there's this splintering effect that happens because we're all going on our own individual journeys through these huge worlds of art and entertainment, and we're also doing it on our own timeline. So those moments that used to exist in the world where we all came together around a big thing like Star Wars or Thriller or the Seinfeld finale, those things don't exist anymore.
Yeah.
Because we're not operating on that one set time frame.
Well, if you want to know more, if you want to hear the practical advice that Ellie has to give, then, well, you'll have to come along on Thursday.
That's right.
Ellie, look, thank you so much.
Thank you,
we're going to let you leave our increasingly hot and steamy studio.
Just the hot box in here, guys.
And let you get off back to the festival. Well, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, David. Thank you.
So last up on our first Walk in Cannes podcast is WARC's very own John Bizzell. Now, John, you have had a busy morning. In fact, you actually raised the curtain on the festival. So why don't you tell us what we've been up to this morning?
Absolutely, David. Last but very much not least, I think you'll agree. So this morning was the second episode of our Effectiveness show. This is the broadcast in which we announced the winners of this year's WARC Awards for Effectiveness. So last week we did the bronze and silvers, and this morning Amy and I announced the golds and the Grand Prix across all 11 categories.
11 categories.
11 categories.
So yeah,
yes.
you've been very busy. Now look, there's 11 Grand Prix, and if people want to know more about all of those Grand Prix and gold winners, they should be tuning into the Effectiveness show. But just for the benefit of our podcast listeners, what are some of the things you've pulled out from some of those winners?
Absolutely. So 11 Grand Prix and 2 Grand Prix for good. So 13 overall. Too much to go through today, but I thought it might be interesting to pull out a couple of examples. Of course, awards in general are about standing out from the competition, but it really helps if the initial campaign that you've entered was something that made the brand stand out. So I thought we might look at 3 campaigns where the brand has done something really distinctive.
Yes, this is like this is just because obviously I know what we're going to talk about, but they're campaigns where they've really sort of bucked the category trend. They've really picked the path of distinctive-ness. So
yes, disruption, if you will, David.
Yeah, well, I know TBWA have that patented, so I'll let's stick with distinctiveness. But anyway, go on. Well, what have you got?
So we're going to start with this great campaign, which was by eBay and Edelman. This is a really interesting one because it's for the sneakerheads. Now, based on both of our very sensible Cannes footwear, we might not consider ourselves in this category, but a lot of people certainly did. So what's really distinctive about this campaign is that eBay, of course, is a famously online retailer, but this campaign saw them manifesting a real-life store in LA, where they were going to sell sneakers to sneakerheads directly. And really what this campaign is about is trying to address an issue that they spotted or an insight that they got from their customers where greedy resellers would buy up all of the new sneaker lines as they dropped and then sell them on for exorbitant prices or sell them for collectors. So they're to be kept, not worn. And the genius of this campaign, which they call the Wear It Out store, is that they offered sneakerheads the option to buy their sneakers directly, but in order to get them at a discount, they had to wear them out of the store.
So they couldn't be resold.
So they couldn't be resold.
Right.
They had to walk over a whole selection of different surfaces, gravel, grass, basically to make it obvious that they couldn't be resold as new. And it worked. You know, around this, they had over 1,600 people visited this store in 3 days, and 99% of them wore those sneakers out of the store. It was combined with a lot of other campaign elements, so we should really mention those. You know, they had a huge. This was linked to the Anaheim Congress, which is all about sneakers. So they had Offset do some influencer marketing, lots of interviews with the media. It was a real big push from eBay to do something completely distinctive, which was not about driving business to the website.
Yeah, and that's interesting, isn't it? Because so much of that kind of business is very retail focused, very footfall focused, and I mean, it must It must have been effective if it's winning a Grand Prix.
Well, absolutely. And I suppose the interesting thing to say there is, whilst this was all about a real life store and giving people the option to walk out of a store with their product, what this ultimately did was drive sales of sneakers on the eBay website up by 25%.
Yeah, amazing. Okay, well, that's one. What else have you got?
So we're moving on to the business to business category next. And I think this is interesting just because it's not necessarily a category, both in the awards and in terms of B2B as a category generally, where you expect to see something particularly distinctive or category breaking. But we definitely found one this year in our winner. So
Go on, tell me more. Tell me more.
This is a fantastic campaign. It's by DDB Mudra Group in India, and it's for Indeed, which you may have heard of. It's a job platform. It's an online website. And what's really distinctive about this campaign is, whilst they were mostly trying to market to small and medium-sized business owners in India to encourage them to recruit via a website rather than what they'd found out from their insights, which is that most of those business owners recruit through family connections,
or personal
friends.
contact.
Absolutely, personal recommendations. They wanted to completely buck that trend and encourage them to use a kind of vetted platform. And again, this really worked. And what they did that's so distinctive for the category is they did it with humour. And
yeah, I mean, humour in itself can be distinctive, particularly if you're in a category like recruitment.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would encourage anyone to watch these ads. There are clips of them as part of the campaign when you see it on the website, but you can watch them online anyway. And they're all really funny. So in each ad, what you have is somebody basically failing at their job whilst they get told, where did you find this person? And it's always through a personal connection, and they end up by saying, should have used Indeed. It works brilliantly.
And did it work?
It did work, yeah. I mean, I've got some real stats here, and I don't want to list them all for you, but the campaign succeeded, they say, in consideration going up by 10% and purchase intent increased by nearly 14%. And also they have this great stat here that during this campaign, Indeed got the highest number of monthly job uploads it had since the website launched. So yes, it was effective.
Brilliant. Okay, let's look at one more campaign. We've got our long-term growth Grand Prix, which, given how hard it is to drive long-term growth, is one of the most prestigious categories. So what won, and how does this sort of feed into the theme?
Yeah. So we should probably start, David, by just, for those who don't know, giving some context here, that the WARC Awards are very specifically judged using our Creative Effectiveness Ladder and the B2B Effectiveness Ladder. And this is a series of rungs that establish how effective a campaign has been. But to hit the top rungs on that ladder, you really need to have been running a campaign for a significant amount of time.
Yeah, and driven results over that, particularly like compounding results.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's what makes this category so hard to win. And actually, they found a brilliant winner this year. This is a company called Back Market. It's a French tech company. And what they say in their submission is that they created a new category. This is the category of refurbished tech in France, which is a big claim to make. I think you'll agree. But they've got some pretty significant metrics that back up what they did. So what's really interesting here is that Back Market were already the leader in this refurbished tech category, although it was very small in France. Lots of the insight that they did with their customers showed that French people understood what refurbished meant, but could never see them buying a refurbished. In this case, it's mostly phones, but it could be any sort of amount of tech. So Back Market came up with this campaign, New is Old, and they hit on this concept that we need to challenge people's desire to have the new, particularly when it comes to tech. And the really clever thing they do here is that they, I'm going to say attack, I don't know if they'd use that word, but they get the idea that people get in these huge queues when there's a new release of tech. And what they're trying to challenge is really that you need to embrace refurbished rather than constantly queuing for this new thing. It's always a new thing. They both attacked it with this campaign about making people see that there's value in something old. And also they did some very sensible things around warranty and that sort of thing. Yeah.
They brought it to life though, didn't they? I mean, it wasn't just about, giving people reassurance. They made people actually interested.
And they changed views about what refurbished is. So whilst their initial customer base was mostly people looking for cheap phones, they struck on this idea that they could make this about sustainability and convince the French consumer base that by buying refurbished, you're actually doing something good for the environment and helping the planet. And this really, really succeeded. I mean, again, if you read the case study, they've got metrics galore confirming how well this campaign has done. But I think one of the really key stats that they put in is that buying a refurbished phone generates 91% less carbon impact. And this stat has really hit home in France. It's still a small market compared to people buying new phones, but when they say that they created a category, I think we could probably say they at least restructured this category. There are other players in the market now. Back market is still the biggest, but the campaign that they built around looking at refurbished products as being in some way part of your overall goal to help the planet is really down to them in this campaign.
Yeah. Brilliant. And subscribers can, of course, read all these papers on WARC, can they not?
All 3 of these papers, plus all of the rest of our winners, and in fact, everything that was shortlisted this year. Great. Available now.
Thank you, John. Well, I know you have a busy week. You're also inside the Creative Effectiveness Lions judging as well.
The WARC Awards are not enough for me, David. I'm going straight into the CREF judging this afternoon.
Okay, well, I'll let you get straight off to that then. But that wraps up our first Walk in Cannes podcast. So if you enjoyed that, then please do follow us on your podcasting platform of choice. We will have the next one tomorrow. And if you want to see what we look like, and if you've not been watching today, then follow WARC's YouTube channel. And you can see us gradually deteriorate over the course of the week.
Yes, sweating.
Right. But until then, thanks for listening.